Welcome back, everyone. Just a quick record of my essential equipment and accessories I recommend before you go off-road. Just had to redo this after a few comments came up, so I needed to make some alterations and back at it. So just before I get started, part of this is sort of prudent to mention a couple of things. Now, I don't profess to be an expert. I don't think anybody out there could say that they know everything on any particular topic. We're all capable of learning new things, and as time goes on, there's always new things that come out, and there's always something that someone else might have to offer that's different or better. So regardless of what I've learned and where I've learned it from and my experience in different vehicles and different terrains, I'm always continuing my learning experience, and I am open to constructive comments and commentary around some of the topics that I discuss, because I also like to see whether or not there are other ways of doing things that I might not be aware of, or if I've said something that might be different to what you think, by all means let me know and put in the comments, or add that to the discussion, and we can definitely look at that, adding those sorts of things in, and changing things if need be, because it's all about growing and learning together as a community, really, so that we can all benefit. And in accordance with that, I would like those comments hopefully to be kept appropriate and as civil as possible. These videos that I do are for educational purposes only, so all the images and content are subject to fair use policy for any copyright laws. I don't like having to put this sort of stuff in here, but it's become a situation where it needed to be put in here to avoid anything in advance. Also, in the same vein, I'd like to state that this advice and any advice I give on my site around forward driving and recoveries and all sorts of stuff, it's all given in good faith, and that forward driving in itself has inherent dangerous activities where you or your vehicle may be at risk, and in doing so, anything you do is at your own peril, at your own risk. Let's put it that way. So with that sort of unpleasant little bit out of the way, let's actually get into the core of what this video is supposed to be about. So what I want to do is simply, we're listing some accessories or equipment that I would say that you need to have before you go off-road, that makes, for the purposes of the fact that it'll assist you if you do get stuck, to get you going again, moving faster again. And I think the first two really are essential to even actually forward driving in the first place. But the rest are all around focusing around what you should have that's going to make recoveries possible, and also quicker and faster and easier. Okay, now we look at, when I put this in order, I've done it in what I would consider a semi-importance list. This is also would be subject to your own budget needs and usage. So your usage might be different to my usage, so you would buy things different from me. But this is my personal opinion. So let's just take it at that. Now, this is just a little picture to give you just a broad concept of some of the items that you should essentially have if you're to head out off-road. If you have all of these things, most of your situation that you're going to encounter as far as accessories are going to be covered in this little image, and we'll go through just looking, everything on that picture we'll go through. So, but that's just to give you an overview. First up, I put Tyre Deflation, because before you even hit off-road, whether it be the beach, mud, or you're going up rocks, hilly terrain, whatever, you're going to have to deflate your tyres to some degree. And how you deflate them is up to you. There are various methods, whether it be simple, a stick or a screwdriver with a timer, or a pressure gauge, or if you buy products like these actually were really popular at one stage, not so much anymore. I actually had these for a period of time, but personally I found that they weren't that effective after a period of time, and I've heard similar stories. I use the valve remover at the moment, but I've actually stopped now because of the amount of forward driving I do and the amount of times I've used this. I've actually noticed it started, the one I'm using anyway, there might be a brand that perhaps it doesn't do this, so I can't say for certain that all of these types do the exact same thing, but I've noticed that mine has caused damage to the valve to the point that one of my valves actually was leaking slightly until I had to get it fixed. So just something to keep in mind when you're looking at those. These ones I've just noticed started coming up. Camboss, very similar concept to these, where you just screw them on to each of your 4 tyres and let it down to a set pressure. I haven't used them personally myself, so I can't really comment on that. This device, this one is another other manufacturers that make this, but this is a Maxtrax also make these one where it does a dual deflation, but it also works as an inflation device as well, or at least there are versions that do both. I have a mate that's just purchased one of these and thinks that it's fantastic, so next time I catch up with him, I'm going to give it a crack, so I'll be able to comment on that when we go through Tyre Deflation in more detail another time, but it's another option that's out there. So it's worth looking into before you go off-road. However you do your Tyre Deflation, do it. Air compressors. So if you didn't do under your tyre modification, full drive modification video I did, where I put an onboard one on. If you don't have onboard, then you're going to have to buy one for your vehicle, so that when you finish full driving, you can get your tyres back up to its pressure to before you hit the bitumen and get back to driving. There are various brands and types, whether they be like this King's Duals, ARB's dual with the tank, ARB single with a tank. It's all up to you as to the preference that you go through, but I would suggest you do your research and ask around before buying them, because pricing varies depending upon the brand and also warranty. Look at your warranty information. I don't want to get into trouble too much, so I'm just going to make note. If I was you, if you're looking at Kings, look at your warranty card and how it works, because it may make you think a little bit about that. So just look into those things. Duals and singles, they just mean that, it'll increase or decrease the amount of time it takes to inflate your tyre. Same with the ARB's tank option, allows you to have that tank that's already pre-filled, so faster tyre inflation. So moving along, I got shovel and Maxtrax. I'd say shovel is right up there. I'd put it in front of a Maxtrax. Your shovel is going to be used all the time, and I would actually suggest, personally, I would go for a standard size, like standard shovel, not those fold-away ones that you might see in recovery kits. They, from my experience, have sometimes don't work as well or break, or more importantly, sometimes you can't reach right underneath your car where you've bottomed out perhaps, and you need to clear away some of that sand. So the longer reach one can come in handy, and if you've got a shovel and you can clear out some of the area that you're bogged in, you may not need to use any other recovery gear. You might be able to then drive out once you've dug away some of the sand or whatever it is that you're in. So a shovel would be right up there. It would be the third thing I would buy, plus they're cheap. Max tracks, they are expensive, but they are very useful. Great to help pull yourself out of bogs or where you've dug yourself in. Little picture on how to use some, how to use them. They come in pairs, so you generally need to buy 4. You can make your own. In my video where I did one on my recovery basics, number 1, where it was just simple stuff, I actually did one where it was a piece of wood that I got off a construction site, and it worked with some modifications, worked beautifully. And the only difference is obviously it just weighs heavier. So if you don't have the funds, DIY versions are available out there as well. If you can just look online, have a look around, there are options, or check out that video. You can see the one that I did and think about doing something similar. Second, snatch strap. So although, like I mentioned, I generally look at self-recovery first, because you're not always going to have a vehicle available. And so some of my videos are focused around ways to get yourself out of situations yourself, wherever possible. If you do have another car and it's faster sometimes just to snatch out, then go ahead. But make sure you're always using a recovery point to snatch from, because you don't want to damage your vehicle by snatching from the tie down points that most factory vehicles have for transport. So always use a recovery point, and don't use your tow ball. I'll go into that in the next slide. And make sure your snatch straps that you're using, they come in sizes and weights or poundage. Generally, they've got poundage written on, or kilograms. So make sure it's in accordance with the vehicle that you're trying to pull out, and you're using your bow shackles to attach these to your vehicle. I've also shown here how to join 2 together to make them longer. Oops, sorry. This here is a DIY version, so they've just stuck a magazine between the 2, so that when they get snatched and pulled, it doesn't force them together and you never get them apart. Or you can buy you can purchase the items that are actually designed specifically for that reason. Whenever you're snatching, use the this one's got a picture of the ARB recovery blanket, but use a recovery blanket, it's a weighted blanket you place over the snatch strap, so that if it breaks, it doesn't fly off and injure people. So it's important for safety reasons to stick that on. And same, I think I just missed something. Yep, I covered that. So next step, we're looking at, because bow shackles, sometimes I refer to them as D shackles because they look like D shackles, but bow shackles are used over the D shackles because of the fact that when you're strapping, it's not always directly from behind. And as such, if you're pulling from an angle, that's why they use the bow shackles. But I sometimes use that term interchangeably, but for this purpose, we'll say bow shackles for correctness. When you attach them, make sure you use the correct rating. They usually have it written on the actual shackle what it's rated for, and make sure it's attached to the appropriate one. Never attach your snatch strap to your tow ball. It could damage the whole section, so you can't. It could bend this, so you actually can't even take your tow ball compartment portion out of the actual bar that it sits inside, or you can actually pull the tow ball itself off altogether, and that goes flying and hurts someone. You have the option of putting your snatch strap straight inside the actual, let's say this is the cylinder area, the square, inside, and use the pin as the hold point. Although there are the pros and cons to this, being that it's generally best if you're only pulling directly from behind. If you're pulling from angles, it can actually sort of damage that pin or cause a little bit of issue if it's going off on angles. If you're doing anything that's other than straight, I'd recommend, and personally, to actually buy the devices or the accessory, I'd say, that actually fits inside as it's supposed to, goes inside the pin, locks it in place, and you've got your bow shackle that's rated, which can either be fitted horizontally or vertically, and can then be pulled if it's from a bit of an angle, and also use your weighted blanket. And those images came from Practical Motoring website, by the way, for anyone that's very curious about that. High lift jack. So this is a useful recovery item. Has, apart from just the idea of the jack, it actually has a couple of other functions that can be quite useful to have. If you get the device here that hooks onto the jack itself, it's actually used to hook onto your frame, like in this picture here, to the actual rim of your tyre, and lifts the tyre up. So this is a perfect example where he's fallen into a ditch. You lift up that tyre, and then you can fill that ditch in, remove it, move your jack, and continue on your way. This is a base plate that's best used for beach forward driving, so that if you're on the beach, you got this nice base plate so that it doesn't sink in the sand. You're not left with it just sinking down. It can also be jerry-rigged to use as a hand winch as well. So it can have a variety of uses beyond just beyond just lifting. So it's handy to have in your accessory list, I would say. Now, you also have the option for hand winches. So if you don't have the money for an electronic winch, and you don't have a high lift, or you don't want to use your high lift, you can get these that they're not that expensive, but they do require a little bit of hard work to actually get them going, like manual labor. But if you're in a pinch and you don't have the funds, then why not? Blocks. I have the next page we do. I go into them in a bit more detail, but essentially a lot of kits, they'll usually include one in, but if they don't, getting the blocks are really important, particularly for winching, or mainly for winching. So here's a picture of one where you have a tree protector, which some come in some prepackaged recovery kits, but if they don't, get one. If you're going to be recovering and using trees as anchor points, using a bow shackle and the block to then help reduce the weight load on your winching. And we'll go through, this is the next slide. So I don't want to spend too much time on the blocks, because I do plan to do videos on a lot of these separately and using them separately. So we'll just quickly highlight some of the uses of blocks as far as when it comes to winching, because they can be very useful ways of rigging things up. And this demonstrates how this is using it around a tree to be able to winch it back onto itself to reduce the amount of, as it says, 2-to-1 change. You can also using it for angle winching. This is a nice example of one we're using the tree as a anchor point, and the block is used to then winch at an angle. So the vehicle is off on this angle, and this vehicle is off at this angle. So say this is the winch point. He's pulling him up towards the tree, even though he's actually offset 45 degrees, and you can use a block for that. Here's an example of a three-way one where there's even less amount of work being placed on those. This is a great example of how a block can be really useful, where you've got a tree with a block here, or an anchor point and a block here. So this is the car that's being winched out, and this is the vehicle that's stationary winching, and it is then pulling this vehicle up towards this anchor point here, whereas this vehicle's offset over here. So you can see the idea of a block can really help in different scenarios. Enough on blocks. So moving on. Next up, I put tyre repair, first aid and fire, but I would actually put first aid. I would suggest that you should have first aid anyway in your car. Most people will, I wouldn't say most people, I'd say a lot of people that I personally know have some sort of first aid kit in the car. But if you're forward driving, I would say it's really important to go out and get yourself some sort of upgraded version, like a survival version, because you are out generally where there is a possibility of injuries. There's a possibility that you're not close to health services, so you might need to take first aid serious more so than you would when you're in the city, for example. So having a more survival style one with a lot more options is just smart for safety reasons, really. I can't put it any more simply than that. I think it's pretty clear why it's important for that to be there. We all want to look after each other, and if you're forward driving with family members, the last thing you want is something going wrong, and not having the appropriate stuff there to treat them until you can get them to the appropriate healthcare. Anyway, tyre repair kit's great to have for quick repairs, even if you do have a spare for long trips. I know for touring, I've punctured my spare and had to do a quick repair just to keep going until I got to my destination and managed to get it fixed properly. So they come in handy, not that expensive for that type of work. And fire extinguisher and the blankets, I mean, they're pretty much self-explanatory. Safety, it's all about minimising risk wherever possible. Same with some of these. So these are some of those extras that not necessity when you just first go off, but can become really handy to have, particularly if you're doing a lot of touring or a lot of forward driving where you don't have cell reception. Jerry cans of fuel and water. Water being a real important one. It's great that I have one in my car that I change every now and again, so it's fresh. But you wouldn't want to be stuck somewhere because some damage to your car and not have access to water for some period of time. It's just safety, really. So it's good to have. And because tree trunk protector didn't come up before in some of the kits, I wanted to mention it again. Particularly for winching. Winch is always, if you're using a tree as an anchor point, please use a tree trunk protector and help protect our environment and our trees. Axes and similar, and what I mean by similar, the word just left my mind, but as you can see in the picture here, it's just to help, clear the path a bit. So it's a tree falling over across your forward driving track. You need to drop a bit away to keep yourself going, or to help in a bog situation. Come in handy. I've got mine in the back of my ute for those types of situations. Handheld UHFs, even if you've got one on board in your car, some of those handhelds can be not only handy, useful and fun, but can also be great for safety. If you've got a family that's out with you forward driving and they go off by themselves somewhere, it's a great way to communicate. Or if something happens and you need to get some assistance to them, that UHF radio can be very helpful in those types of situations when you need assistance. I know in my personal experience, having to rush to someone else's help because they had a UHF radio on them and they needed assistance with the problem, had to go and give them a hand. So, for safety reasons, that's why I mentioned that. Last thing on this one was a ground anchor. These are more for winching, and it's more for beach style winching because if you don't have a tree or something to use as an anchor point, you can use this, and it might save you from going DIY and burying your spear in the sand and using that as your anchor. Paying some money for that can be another option. But if you don't have money and you're on the sand, bury your spear. I've recently come across this new recovery. I wouldn't say new, but it's new because I've only more recently seen them. Then haven't seen them in stores as much. They're online at the moment, but it's called Bogged Out. As you can see, they work similar to the concept of winching, but using the vehicle engine and its wheels as a way of winching yourself forward or backwards by attaching itself to the rim, and then it loops around the tyre as the tyre turns, and depending on where it's anchored to. So in this example, it's anchored backwards. As the tyre spins, it wraps the straps around the wheel, and then eventually pulls the vehicle backwards, or if you go on the front, pulls the vehicle forwards. I've seen the videos of it, and it looks pretty good. I'm really interested in giving them a whirl, so I'm actually going to go out and get one and give it a go and film it so we can demonstrate it for this group and for our community to see whether or not if it's worth it. May avoid you having to buy a winch or use a hand winch. So in conclusion, just want to finish up. This is most of what I would say is what you need to go off-road. I don't know if I've covered everything. There might be other stuff out there that is needed, and you don't need all of them to go off-road. If you get a couple of the things, at least the first few, there, at least you've got the basics covered, and most of the scenarios that you're going to get in, you will be able to recover from. But the more that you have, the better chance you have of getting out faster and quicker and enjoying your forward driving trip more. I don't go into the realm in this video specifically like for things for touring, fridges and rooftop tents and all the rest of it, because that's outside the scope, and there'll be future videos on all of the items themselves, the usage of them, do's and don'ts and so forth, and that's all going to be separate. So this is just mainly just looking at the list of stuff that you'd want to look at purchasing to make your forward driving more enjoyable, and that's pretty much it. So I thank you for your time. If you'd like to see some of the upcoming videos, please subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you next time.